This is Gregory Peck, and here's Louis B. Mayer in his office just a couple of seconds before Gregory Peck made him cry. Why did this happen? The story behind how a relatively new actor could bring the biggest studio head to tears is more complex than you might think. In this video, not only will you discover why Gregory Peck made Mayer cry, but also how the decision he made at that time became a life-changing moment for him. Moreover, you'll understand how such a seemingly career-killer decision had significant consequences for Peck's life and reputation. I must say, situations like these were extremely rare in the film industry, and perhaps still are today. But before we dive in, sign up for our newsletter now. Don't miss a single vintage tale. Link in the description. While reading Lynn Haney's biography about Gregory Peck, I came across a very interesting story I want to share with you. So, here is what happened. In the old days, big shots at the movie studios had a lot of control. They ran large operations with actors, writers and directors always moving around. It took a few years to train actors like Gregory Peck. To make sure actors stuck with them, studios made them sign contracts for 7 years, the most allowed by law. The deal usually favoured the studio bosses. Some actors felt like they were in fancy slave quarters wearing golden shackles. Louis B. Mayer was a powerful and notorious figure in Hollywood, unlike any other mogul. Surrounded by myths, he earned nicknames like Mr. Movies. The stars under his management had to deal with his strong personality and cunning tactics to thrive in the competitive film industry. Louise Rayner, a German-born star, is a perfect example of how Hollywood studios abused their power. Despite winning 2 Academy Awards in 1936 and 1937 for The Great Ziegfeld and The Good Earth, her career took a downward turn. Instead of getting quality roles, she was forced into mediocre films due to her contract with MGM. Unable to choose her projects, she decided to break the contract. In response, Louis B. Mayer's threatening words, "We made you and we can kill you," highlighted the harsh realities of the industry. Now picture this scene. Greg, entering Louis B. Mayer's office, is met with the grandeur of massive walnut doors. As he steps inside, a 60-foot-long plush white carpet guides him toward a crescent-shaped desk covered in white leather. Sam Goldwyn remarked, "You needed an automobile to reach his desk." At that desk sat Mayer, a stout figure with beady eyes, rimless glasses dangling from a chain, and hands adorned with charming dimples reminiscent of a cardinal's grace. At first he tried to act like a father figure, Greg recalled. He got all emotional talking about how he'd helped other actors like Mickey Rooney, Robert Taylor and Judy Garland. When I didn't give in, he switched gears and attacked my work in the legit theatre, trying to make it seem less important. When that didn't work, Mayer, like he had a plan, went for a different approach. He pulled out a handkerchief and started crying. He said it was because I wasn't letting him turn me into the biggest movie star ever, Greg said. Yes, you heard it right. The most influential studio mogul was shedding tears because he couldn't get Gregory Peck. Greg stood his ground, but Mayer still wasn't ready to concede defeat. In his final ploy, he depicted Peck's refusal as an offence to motherhood, the American flag and family decency. Big fat tears continued to roll down his cheeks and fell off his chin. Then, seeing that Peck would not relent, he shooed him out the door. "My God, what a performance," Greg told Leland Hayward, who shaped the careers of many, was waiting outside. Leland, the hottest talent agent in Hollywood, chuckled. "He does that every day. He loves to cry." You see, Mayer's trick to manipulate actors was crying, an old trick we all know. Typically kids and women use it as a tool, but would you expect that from a real man? Now you can understand that these studio kings would have done anything, break any moral code to get their money makers if they could smell some box office success. Money. A not-so-wise actor would have said yes to a 7-year contract with the biggest studio, not realizing that it's the equivalent of imprisoning himself. It means losing all his rights, not just regarding the movies he can be involved in, but also his personal life, every aspect, I would say. However, Gregory Peck was different. Haywood found himself in the middle of a feud with Mayer after the failed attempt to sign Peck. As a matter of fact, said Haywood, one of the biggest feuds in years developed between me and Metro, particularly between myself and Louis B. Mayer, because we weren't able to sign Peck then and there. Despite the tensions, time gradually healed the breach, although it never evolved into, in Haywood's words, a passionate love affair. Haywood had a history with Peck, knowing he was special. In 1942, Leland Haywood, who knew about Peck's talent, faced a big question as talent scouts circled around the young actor. "Who the heck is Gregory Peck?" he asked, puzzled despite seeing Peck's name on his company's list of performers and writers. Normally busy with million-dollar deals for stars like Henry Fonda and Judy Garland, Haywood found himself interested in Peck's rising reputation. Meanwhile, on another phone line, Sam Goldwyn waited, eager to sign Peck to a 7-year contract. In this crucial moment, Haywood decided to figure things out before making a decision. Goldwyn said, "I'm willing to go up to $1,000 a week." Haywood, with his trademark ease, countered, "Make it $3,000. Both were masters of bluffing, but Haywood had the upper hand. Known as the Toscanini of the telephone, he cajoled and charmed, manipulating anyone on the other end of the line. As his daughter Brooke Haywood recalled in Haywire, a memoir of their fascinating yet doomed family, he was happiest conducting business on his office sofa, surrounded by 3 or 4 telephones, his head buried in a cushion at one end, his feet crossed at the other. The Goldwyn studio was a major independent producer in Hollywood, and Samuel Goldwyn was not only known for his film making, but also for his memorable sayings such as, "It's more than magnificent, it's mediocre," or "You've got to take the bull by the teeth," and "God makes stars, it's up to the producers to find them." Upon hearing back from New York about Peck, Haywood's curiosity heightened. The actor was described as 27 years old, standing almost 6 foot 3 inches tall, weighing 170 pounds and possessing dark handsomeness. His gaunt physique and bushy eyebrows gave him the air of a young Abe Lincoln, but sexier, and his voice, deep, resonant, and compelling, it could reach the farthest corners of the orchestra and the back rows of the balcony. While Peck's talent wasn't earth-shattering, he exuded intelligence and ambition, plus he had that elusive star quality, charisma. Now Haywood had the perfect bait to dangle in front of the studio bosses. With the Second World War in full swing, the moguls were in a tight spot. Hollywood's leading male stars like Clark Gable, Tyrone Power, Jimmy Stewart, Henry Fonda, Robert Montgomery, Robert Taylor, and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. were all answering the call to fight. The studio heads were desperate to find any reasonably good-looking young men with a decent profile who knew a thing or two about acting. And here's the interesting part. Gregory Peck had a bad sacroiliac. He was unfit for combat, thus disqualifying him from military service. A handsome, ambitious actor who isn't in the war. Perfect. Gregory Peck was a big hit with the studios at that time. But it was a double-edged weapon. Greg's 4F draft status presented a major issue. In newspaper photos shown at the movies, Americans witnessed brave GIs losing limbs, getting injured and fighting against tyranny. These soldiers were hailed as heroes, liberating oppressed people. So why was a seemingly fit Gregory Peck sitting out the war? Zanuck wasn't about to admit that Greg got injured in something as sissified as a dance class. Instead, he released a statement suggesting that the rugged actor hurt his back while rowing for Barclay's team. This fabricated tale aimed to maintain Peck's tough image, shielding him from any perceived weakness due to the injury. To learn more about the promising Mr. Peck, Leland Haywood picked up the phone and called the actor directly. "The studios want to get a look at you," he rasped, his voice filled with intensity. "So come on out. I'll front you the money for the trip." Peck didn't immediately jump at the offer. For one thing, he was a thoughtful person inclined to mull over decisions. Additionally, he was shy. And this is the part of Gregory Peck that I'm sure you didn't know, his real personality. Sometimes, or more likely almost all the time, actors make us believe that what we saw on the screen is real and true to their character. He often portrayed strong and principled figures, but behind closed doors, the idea of presenting himself in front of the influential royalty of Hollywood made him extremely nervous. But there was more to it. To better understand his state of mind, let's take a brief look back at where he came from and where he thought he was going. How does a shy actor transform into someone who confidently says no to studio heads? Learn why committing to the studio has proven to be both a blessing and a curse. It's unlike the typical Hollywood story. Greg didn't just step into the limelight, he practically stumbled into the world of acting, like a serendipitous discovery. Now we are in California, a charming seaside haven just outside San Diego. While it's now an upscale community, back then it exuded a bohemian, unpretentious charm. It had the same feel as Macomb, Alabama, the hometown of Greg's legendary character Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. And did you know that Greg once thought about becoming a truck driver? Where the rich mingled with the not-so-rich and the young and old knew each other, everyone was in the loop about everyone else's business. This is where Greg's story began. Coming from what folks used to call a broken home, Greg dealt with emotional bruises, but strangely enough, felt free from the grip of overprotective parents. Early on he learned to stand on his own, even though his world was pretty small. He was really good at driving that red Union oil rig around the town. And like many times in his incredible life, a woman played a key role at just the right moment. In this case, his girlfriend, Betty Clardy, pushed him to knuckle down and hit the books. Greg liked to talk about luck when recounting what happened next. It might have been his way of making up for the tough times he had growing up, or an attempt to seek favour from the gods. Either way, when he came to the East, he not only experienced luck, but also showed a talent for making it happen, putting himself in the right place at the right time. Greg wasn't alone. E.B. White, a writer for The New Yorker, noted, "New York can destroy an individual, or it can fulfill him, depending a good deal on luck. No one should come to New York to live unless he is willing to be lucky." He started by selling blood, dining at the Automat, later claiming it served the best eggs and bacon in New York, and occasionally camping in Central Park became his way of life. The rest was up to him. Schooled by adversity, he became adept at the hand-to-mouth existence of an aspiring actor. In those bygone years before heightened security, a man of modest means could store his belongings in a locker at Grand Central Station and join the hobos snoozing under the stars. "It didn't feel like a hardship, it was such an adventure," Greg reminisced. "We didn't have the money to attend the plays and would wait until people came out to smoke a cigarette after the first act. We would mingle with them, then go into the theatre and look for empty seats, so I saw the second and third act of practically everything on Broadway." Years later, speaking to journalists, he said, "I was never hungrier and maybe never happier." You see, living the life of a thespian was pure magic. The neighbourhood playhouse was a hub of creativity, buzzing with ideas, talent and glamour. Guiding it all was Sanford Meisner, the director with roots in the revolutionary group theatre of the 1930s. Here performances went beyond words, tapping into characters' inner lives for an emotional realism that wowed critics and audiences alike. Among Greg's classmates were stars like Tony Randall, Eli Wallach, and Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. Meisner went on to mentor legends like Joanne Woodward, Diane Keaton, Robert Duvall and Grace Kelly. It was a time of enchantment, and its impact lingered on the careers of those who walked its stages. I know it sounds kind of unexpected given the whole artistic vibe, but that's when Peck got hit with his chronic sacroiliac problem. Martha Graham's movement classes were like a workout boot camp with crazy stretching exercises. Now, even though Greg wasn't the most flexible guy, it was all about trying to impress. One day, things took a painful turn. Legs stretched out, head on knees. Graham, seeing how the girls were all stretchy like rubber bands and the guys were a bit stiff, decided to play coach. She stuck her knee in Greg's back and pushed, saying, "Come on, Gregory, you can do it," and then bam, a loud snap. Next morning he couldn't move. That injury caused Gregory more headaches than you might think, but not in the way you'd expect. Though Greg never went to war, his life wasn't easy. While heroes fought on the battlefield, those like Greg, labelled 4F, faced either disdain or sympathy, a tall, wolfish man not fighting for his country. Some might call him a coward, stirring undeserved pity from those unaware of the real situation. People are often ignorant of the facts, and there's a demand for someone on the silver screen. What's the right thing to do in this situation? To become an actor, Greg had many challenges, refining his skills in summer stock and touring companies. Throughout this time, he was constantly learning. The key to his destiny? Dedication. Despite any lack of inherent talent, Greg compensated with sheer tenacity, according to veteran actor Helen Hayes. Only a true actor with a deep-seated compulsion is going to endure the struggle that comes with being in the theatre. It's brutal, even worse than a Marine boot camp. And Greg faced harsh criticism when he was the lead in Emlyn Williams' play The Morning Star. A critic during the Philadelphia tryout complained, "Mr. Peck looks more like a wax dummy in a tailor shop than an actor headed for Broadway." How would this make you feel? Around this time, Leland Haywood got in touch with Greg, telling him to head west. Greg wasn't so sure. Hollywood seemed like Barracuda territory, and in a town obsessed with looks, he might just end up another pretty face. Back in New York, things were going great. He was hitting his stride in the theatre scene. Greg wanted to stick around, prove his talent, find his spot, you know. He figured it was just a matter of time before he'd be snagging roles in plays that ran longer. But maybe not. His Broadway gigs were short-lived. Doubt and insecurity started creeping in. When am I going to work again, if ever? Greg wondered. I felt like I was going up a one-way street into a blind alley. If I didn't make it, what in God's name would I do with myself? Theatre society didn't see Hollywood as a step up. Traditional actors often looked down on film acting. Cedric Hardwicke, who shared the stage with Greg in The Keys of the Kingdom, once said, "I believe that God felt sorry for actors, so he created Hollywood to give them a place in the sun and a swimming pool. The price they had to pay was to surrender their talent." It seems like fellow actors feel pity for Gregory Peck. That's just the way it was. Even his mentor, Catherine Cornell, who consistently offered Greg roles, shared with French actor Jean-Pierre Aumont. "Poor Greg, I like him a lot, but he'll never make a picture to save his life. One of his ears is larger than the other." In the lingo of the business, Greg lacked those bulletproof camera angles. From a distance on the stage, he presented an impressive sight, with towering height and broad shoulders that seemed almost padded. Yet up close his features were sizable, uneven, and somewhat hollow. 3 vertical lines adorned his forehead, and 2 perpendicular valleys graced his cheeks. Nevertheless, his profile exuded a classic matinee idol charm, and it was undeniable that he possessed a darkly handsome, albeit melancholic, allure. A few years down the road, after Greg captured the world's attention, the astute Gracie Burns, wife of George Burns, dissected his enchantment. It's just his eyes, nose and mouth, but what an assembly job! Quite an unexpected insight into Peck's Hollywood journey, isn't it? As I mentioned before, Leland Haywood and Peck go way back, with Leland persistently trying to get him on board with his proposal. One day Greg finally said yes to Leland's offer. The money was too good to pass up, and Haywood wasn't the type to accept no from anyone. So off to Los Angeles went Peck, generously accommodated by Haywood at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Back then the hotel was a hot spot for Hollywood's elite. Greg liked Haywood right away, and who wouldn't? Haywood stood out in the competitive world of Hollywood agents. Henry Fonda said he could sell the proverbial snowball to the Eskimos, and William Wyler noted he charmed the birds off the trees, the money out of the coffers, and ladies into their beds. Even Leland's ex, Katharine Hepburn, considered him the most wonderful man in the world, describing everything with Leland as a delightful surprise. In the golden age of movies, studios wielded immense power, and Leland worked diligently to fortify that influence. With each movie empire churning out 70 or 80 films a year, it became crucial for them to secure themselves. The key strategy was this 7-year contract with actors, ensuring they had a firm grip on their acting puppets. Greg loved wandering around the Paramount lot, soaking in the thrill of watching people work. The studio, like a fancy country club, held a lot of history. It was where big names like D.W. Griffith, Cecil B. DeMille, Joseph von Sternberg and Preston Sturges made movies with stars like Mary Pickford, Clara Bow, Gary Cooper, Bing Crosby and Marlene Dietrich. For many, Paramount embodied the perfect mix of romance, glamour, and movie magic that defined the golden era of studios. Behind its gates, enchantment happened every day, offering an escape more alluring than the world outside. As director Ernst Lubitsch once put it, "I've been to Paris, France, and I've been to Paris Paramount. Paris Paramount is better." In an era characterized by repression, Greg sought refuge in the world of theatrical roles to express his authentic feelings. The studio bosses, known for their ruthless, baldy and daring personalities, held a particular fascination for him. These despotic chiefs efficiently managed their vast studios, manoeuvring contract players, writers and directors like chess pieces, with constant shuffling, reassignments and substitutions being the norm. Given the significant time and effort invested in nurturing talents like Gregory Peck, studios were determined to retain actors until they matured. An executive humorously remarked, "We are the only company whose assets all walk out the gate at night." To secure their money, studio bosses pressured actors into signing 7-year contracts. This was the way. Some actors, feeling bound in golden shackles, likened their situation to residing in luxurious slave quarters. Louis B. Mayer stood out among these Hollywood moguls, holding unmatched power, striking fear, and cultivating a unique aura. Surrounded by crafted myths, he earned nicknames from Mr. Movies to something I cannot say here on YouTube, but I let you use your imagination. Surviving in his star-studded stable meant navigating Mayer's distinctive dramatic flair and cunning ways. Decisions like Peck's became a growing headache for the Hollywood studios. The whole concept of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences was cooked up by Louis B. Mayer back in 1926 to tackle exactly this kind of problem. But let's not dive too deep into the intricacies of studio power without tipping our hats to the practical perks it brings. Think fatter paychecks, job security, health insurance and retirement plans. Winning awards wasn't just for show. It meant studios treated you a little extra special, and that, my friends, was their way of making sure you felt being their prized possession was worth it. Cary Grant is a perfect example of this. He was the first to go independent, and he paid the price for it. To the traditional bigwigs in Hollywood, he was officially an outsider, a foe of their system, disliked as much as any independent trade union activist. As much as Grant rubbed the studios the wrong way, he held a grudge against them too. In his eyes, they stubbornly refused to give him the Oscar recognition he felt he deserved. It wasn't just an ego thing for him. He believed it cost him and the studios millions in box office profits. You see, in Hollywood, a film's success gets a serious boost if it bags an Oscar, and he didn't just star in those successful films, he had a piece of the pie. By making the same decision as Grant, Gregory Peck had positioned himself as one of the less valuable actors in the eyes of the studios, regardless of his talent. But in the end, he was right. He worked as a freelancer, allowing him to choose any role that appealed to him. Eventually he made a decision that turned out to be the role of a lifetime, in every sense of the word. He earned 5 nominations for Best Actor at the Academy Awards and secured a win for his exceptional performance in To Kill a Mockingbird in 1963. Peck mentioned in an interview that he felt a connection to the role because the book resonated with his own experiences growing up in California. Now that you understand how the system worked and grasp the power some people wielded over the fate of others, you appreciate the significance of Gregory Peck not allowing himself to be chained down. It was a considerable mistake for others in the profession to look down on him just because he may not have been in the war. On this battlefield he prevailed. Not many people would have dared to say no to L.B. Mayer, even among the war hawks. Greg held on to the memory of his encounter, which I shared at the very beginning with Mayer, vividly. It was a story he recounted countless times throughout his extensive career. For him it was a defining moment. Greg was perceptive enough to realize that the moguls were gradually losing their hold on actors. However, he also demonstrated something crucial to himself. Despite his uncertainty about his acting abilities, he mustered the courage not to sign on the dotted line in the face of Mayer's formidable powers of persuasion, bullying and contempt. It signalled to Mayer and himself that regardless of the future, he would be his own man. If you're excited and eager to dive deeper into Gregory Peck's life, I highly recommend checking out Lynn Haney's biography. It offers a truly unique perspective on understanding this legend. You can find the link to the biography in the video description. The story doesn't stop here. As I dived into the details for the next video, things behind the scenes started becoming clearer. Check out the next video for the full scoop. What fueled Cary Grant's vendetta against Hollywood?